I see. Yes, it's okay. Okay. All right. Well, good morning. Thanks so much for coming to Coffee at 10 today. So happy to have Baughman here for Freshwater Futures. My name is Sheila, I'm the Legal Arts Director here. And before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors because we have so many people supporting us. First of all, our members supporting us. And Comfort Keepers is our legal arts sponsor. Winfred Johnson Supply Foundation supported our summer programming and these immersive exhibits, as well as Wayne Boatyard, Van Dampo, the Michigan Arts and Culture Council, National Endowment for the Arts, and also Bayview. So really super happy. So I just want to say something about, you're here because maybe you already know something about Freshwater Futures, or you're curious. So Freshwater Future is a catalyst for community action that strengthens policies designed to safeguard the waters of the Great Lakes region. So yeah, we'll tell you all about that. Oh, I'm sorry. The mission of Freshwater Future is a catalyst for community action. We're so happy that Anne is here today. I'm grateful to Susan Baughman here for suggesting that we invite Anne, because I didn't know Karen for that. So this is a wonderful thing about our community. And Michelle here suggested Jerry Dennis the other day. So, as members, like we're just members of the public, if you have suggestions for programming people think that would be great, please reach out to us. So Anne, I just wanted to tell you about me. Oh, and the reason why we're having this here, I understand. I don't know, are you an artist, Anne? No. I'd like to thank her. I took a class this spring. Yes. So I asked her. But this artist with a desire to be an artist. Okay. Well, anyway, Anne is here to talk about Freshwater Futures and the work that they're doing. Talk about climate change. And so at the History Arts Center, we're expanding our programming because art is about the world. Art, if you look around and see this exhibition, we have a plein air painting, a week of painting with a fresh paint sale that will happen next Thursday. People are looking at our beautiful environment and how do we keep it beautiful? It's through the care and stewardship. So even though this is not a presentation to talk about art, it very much feeds into our beautiful and very special environment. So just want to introduce Anne. Anne Baughman is the Assistant Director. And Anne began working for Freshwater Future in the fall of 2006. And she manages our climate program, helping communities build resilience to impacts of climate change. In addition, Anne works on diversifying funding sources for the organization. Prior to working at Freshwater Future, she serves as the Watershed Protection Director and National Park Service Ranger. Anne has a bachelor's degree of science and natural resources from the University of Michigan. Anne works out of the Tosca office. I just want to say also afterwards, Anne and Leslie Burke will be at the table back there with brochures. And I'm just going to introduce Leslie because she's here too, and she's not doing the talk today. No, I'm not. Talk to her. Leslie is the Communications and Development Director for Freshwater Futures, and she has over 20 years of experience helping to build relationships. And we'll have an opportunity to talk today. Okay. So, okay, welcome. Great. Thank you so much, Bill. That's nice. That takes a lot of the first few slides away, so that's for that for you. But I want to thank everyone for talking. I know summer's busy and there's a lot of eating activities. So the fact that you would choose to come and want to learn a little bit more about climate change in the Great Lakes, I just want to thank you very much for doing that. Today, what I'm hoping to be able to do is, we all know how special these waters
are in our region. I mean, they're near and dear to our hearts. And what I'm hoping is, we know climate change is impacting them. So I'm hoping to give you a little bit of insight into what some of the trends and the models are showing for that. And then hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about that, but then also think about what we can do to protect them as we move forward into the next decades. So we'll see how this works. So Sheila did a great job kind of introducing Freshwater Future, but I just wanted to share a few other just kind of little tidbits about you. One of those is we don't have a Petoskey office anymore. So since the pandemic, we have gone to remote offices. So if you're downtown and you're looking for us, you won't find us. I'm very sorry. We loved it when we had an office, but it just isn't part of the reality in today's world. But we have been around for 30 years. We actually started as a project at Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. So at the time, our staff was very involved in doing advocacy locally in the 4 counties that the Watershed Council served: Antrim, Charlevoix, Emmett, and Sheboygan. And we would get requests from all over the state and the region for help on advocacy, and we just didn't have the capacity. And we said, we can't do that. We can't take on your issues for you. But at the same time, we realized that if we were going to protect Lake Michigan and Little Traverse Bay and Lake Huron, we needed people in Door County, Wisconsin, and in Sault Ste. Marie to be doing the right things too, right? So we needed community groups like ours to be doing that same type of advocacy to protect water resources. So one of my brilliant colleagues at the time came up with this idea to start a program that would create a fund and a network. Many of you know him, Will Sweikel. And, it was a brilliant idea. And from that, it really took off. It was in 2006 that Freshwater Future had to go out on our own. And that was due to funding circumstances. So we just didn't have a choice. If it was going to survive, it had to be a separate organization. But since then, we've been able to continue those same type of programs to really work to protect the resources and support community action in the Great Lakes region, including Ontario. And that means we give a lot of grants out. We've given almost 1,500 grants and very close to $6 million over those 30 years to help communities advocate, to help them hold polluters accountable, governments accountable, decision makers accountable, to be reviewing permit processes across the region. And in addition to that, we do a lot of capacity building. We need those community groups. I need somebody in Cadillac working on that PFAS issue because we can't do it. We can't do it in Tawas, where they're working on the PFAS and other issues as well. So we need those local community groups to work together and to be doing the work on the ground. So we help them to become 501c3s. We help them with communications, with staying legal organizations, with fundraising, whatever it might take to be a stronger organization. And then we do a lot of networking and working on issues ourselves. So we bring a lot of people together to collaborate on issues when it makes sense, where we all can see where our niches are and our agreement and work on things. We also will sometimes pick issues that nobody's working on and lend some of our resources that way. For example, we've been pretty involved in drinking water issues, especially since Flint. And we're working on trying to get legislation in Michigan to have affordable water for the entire state. And so we have legislation introduced by East Lansing Representative Devendorf, and she is, this legislation will make sure that there's a tiered rate system, that water shutoffs don't occur anymore. So it's a step towards making sure we all have access to water as a human right. So those type of issues that we will work on and dedicate more resources. You can go to our website to learn more, and it's easy to find and tell you more about that later. So today, though, what I really want to talk about is how special these resources are to us. Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Walloon Lake, Crooked Lake, Pickerel Lake, Bear River, Sturgeon, Pigeon. All of these are incredible resources, even the wetlands in the area. And summer here is really like no other place, right? And I know we all have special memories and experiences on these waters. It's hard for me to really come up with a favorite one, but the one that I look forward to every year is to, in August, go up to Sturgeon Bay north of Cross Village. And I want to go on, usually it's mid-August, but sometimes it's earlier, when the water has reached that temperature that I can stay in for more than 2 minutes, right? So I am admitting how wimpy I am. I get that, but it has to be a little bit warmer. And then I want it to be a clear, cool day, a clear day. I can go, I can swim, I can float. I like it calm, so I can just lay there and look up at the blue sky and see blue sky, blue water, and it just feels like heaven to me. So on those dark January, gray, cold days, I will think about those. Remember how great that was? And it gets me through some of those, right? So I look forward to that every year. Now I have lots of other things I love too, but I'd like to hear from you. So if anybody's brave enough and willing to share what some of your favorite experiences are in our waters up here. Yeah, in the back.
It's delightful time to be so.
Oh, yes, I love that. Yeah, great. Huh?
Watch ice build and stuff.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I like the canoe float trip on the Bear River.
Oh, fun. Yeah, super fun. Yeah.
A lot of kayaking. You can really
Mhm.
explore a lot of the waterways. I'm looking at your image up here and I'm thinking that's probably a place I've kayaked before, but kayaking in the spring when the sturgeon running up the river, that's
Wow.
really a kayaking experience.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm going to add that to my list. I think that's Kenyon actually sorry, Kenyon. I think that's Shoops Creek on Walloon Lake.
Ah,
Yeah. No, this is Walloon Lake, Shoops Creek. It does look a little bit like Maple River spreads though.
and
Yeah.
it looks like the Indian River coming out in.
Yeah, the spreads there.
To Mullet Lake.
Yeah.
But like that too.
Those are some of my favorite places to kayak, those river. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, Susan.
Well, I found one piece of white cedar with the bark removed, Washington pieces, and I made sculpture out of it. So I
Oh,
have Michigan sculptures.
oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other last ones people want to throw out? Sheila.
Swimming at the beach in the bay at the end of Hampton Street at sunset.
Oh,
My friend.
nice. Well, there's some good ones to add. Yeah.
This one here with all the ice reminds me of some friends and I rented those cabins up there.
Oh, yeah. Huh?
And it was this blue ice out there.
Yeah.
So cool, like that, the color. of the
Yeah.
ice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, all of these experiences are really what helps to kind of, define our region. It really helps to, it makes up our heritage of who we are as a region. And it also is part of our identity. Who are we? But we know that climate change is going to potentially impact these experiences. And how does it put them at risk? So let's take a little look at some of the trends and models and see how our waters might be at risk from some of them. So one of the things before I get started, though, is down at the bottom here. Almost all of the information is from the Great Lakes Integrated Science Assessment, which is a cooperative program. So those of you will be happy between the University of Michigan and Michigan State University. So both, it's a house divided kind of thing, house project. We rely on both universities to do really great work for this. They put out incredible research. They provide fact sheets. They give information to governments, to businesses, the data that we need to be able to make decisions moving forward. So I'll be honest, I'm not a climatologist. I am more of a water resource manager. So I'm here looking at that lens. So there might be some climate questions you have that I might not be able to answer, but I can direct you to somebody. So let's talk a little bit of, yeah.
Temperature referred to water temperature? or
No,
air?
this is going to be air temperature. Okay, I don't have a ton of data on water temperature. We'll talk about that though. So this is air temperature. Air temperature since 1951 has already increased 2.9 degrees. By mid-century, by 2050, the models are showing it will increase up to 3 to 6 degrees, right? So let's hope it's going to be 3, right? No, it will be total. Yeah, so it won't be in addition to that. Yeah. By 2050, so by mid-century. By the end of the century, the projected models show it could be up 6 to 10 degrees. If we continue on the path that we're continuing on. So, what does this really mean? So this graph on the map on the right here is showing actually, it's just through 2023, but it's showing that even though the average is 2.9 degrees, there's certain parts of the region that are feeling those warmer temperatures more. right? So you can see the darker orange is where we're feeling the temperatures more, and that includes us. It's Grand Traverse, Antrim, Charlotte, Williamson County are seeing a 3 to 4 degree increase in our region. Now, that's not necessarily in the summer. It could be in the winter because winter temperatures have been rising faster than the summer temperatures. So we'll go to that, look at that a little bit more. So here's kind of an example of that. So you can see this is the entire country and the annual temperature, and then so kind of that average, but then the winter temperatures is where we're really seeing the rise over the summer. So, and we all can maybe experience that, especially if you're a skier or a snowmobiler or ice angler. So what does this mean for our waters, right? We've got warmer air temperatures, but like Kenyon said, what does that mean for water? So it means that our waters warm up faster too, right? The water temperatures warm up faster. As the water temperatures warm up faster, it means warmer water holds less oxygen. So it means there's potentially in the areas that don't get any mixing, those areas lose oxygen more quickly. And then there's less areas of habitat for fish and wildlife in our lakes. In trout streams, our trout streams pretty much rely on groundwater input, but they do have some surface water input. So anywhere there's a greater influence of surface water input, that's going to influence, potentially raise the temperature to potentially conditions that might not be suitable for trout. It decreases that oxygen again. It can also mean more algae. Warmer algae likes to grow. They need sunlight, it needs nutrients, and it likes warmer temperatures. So if we get warmer temperatures, then algae can grow more quickly. It can be earlier recreation. That means everyone gets their boats out earlier, they get out in the water, and that means more demands on public safety, right? That means the sheriff has to get their boats out early. It means there's more cost potentially for navigating that. It also means there's reduced ice days, warmer temperatures, right? The ice gets on the lakes later in the season, and it comes off earlier, breaks up earlier. So that means we've got less ice fishing. So anyone who's relying on ice fishing as part of the economy. It also means more evaporation. So warmer temperatures, we get more evaporation. That more evaporation means lake levels can fluctuate, especially on both inland lakes and big lakes. But it also, more evaporation leads to increased precipitation. So we'll go to that. I'm going to skip this one. So increased precipitation. So since 1951, total precipitation's increased 15% in the region. The models show that it's likely to continue to increase, but they don't really know how much. So, that's the thing. There's some science, but they can't say it's going to increase by a certain percentage over time. We just are looking at probably even more rainfall coming. We know that we're going to continue to get more lake effect snow, though, up to mid-century. So because we're going to have those warmer temperatures, those are going to be moving over the lakes. We're going to have increases in lake effect snow. They can't really predict which areas are going to get it. When Marquette got hugely hit last year, as did Gaylord, but not every place, right? So we don't really know where it's going to end up. But after mid-century, it's likely to become more rain, right? So then we're going to get less lake effect snow, and we're just going to get more winter rain. And these warmer winters mean, the spring starts earlier, right? And then that can change ice storms. And I know we all lived through the ice storm, so it was not fun. But those ice storms weren't typically in our region as much, right? You would have ice storms in the Appalachians a lot, right? They're much more used to experiencing those because of the typical conditions. But we might see those more frequently. So what are the impacts? I just want to talk, this is I kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but we're getting more precipitation, just the warmer temperatures are in the winter, but we're also getting more precipitation in the winter and the fall. So that obviously impacts agriculture as well. So the impacts to water from more precipitation, you have more rain, you have more pollution, you have more runoff, more pollution. Especially in northern Michigan, almost, majority of our pollution comes from rain. When it rains, it picks up pollution on the land. It discharges them either directly to our water bodies. In some instances, it might get to a wastewater treatment plant where it has a chance to get removed, or some stormwater features where it removes the pollutants, but not everywhere. It means increased pollution can contribute to closed beaches, water quality issues for aquatic life. It can cause increased soil erosion, stream banks destabilization when you get especially those flash floods. I know we're seeing more of those on Kim and I in our neighborhood, one of our creeks. It used to be pretty steady and now it's up and down all the time. And we're also going to get fluctuating lake levels. It's just a few things. Okay, I'm trying not to depress you too much though. So this is a little more dramatic. So we'll go to the little more dramatic part. So one of the things with climate change is we are definitely seeing more extreme events. So I'll give you a little tour. We'll start with this upper left. Some of these photos are a little old, but we're still getting events. So this is Grand Rapids in 2013. So extreme flooding downtown. Somebody was in a building, got to see the carp swimming by. Not particularly safe, but they have had additional floods since then too, right? This is not the last flooding experience that they have had. This is Chicago in 2018, roads completely barely passable. This is a Detroit basement, 2021. And this is Duluth in 2013, and Duluth has had several flooding events as well, but you can see the complete sinkhole and destruction of that road. So extreme events are typically rain events where you get multiple inches of rain, either in a very short period of time or over multi-days, right? So they're the type of events that it's big, right? It's big news. It's it's all in the news for Texas right now, and they get those more frequently, but it is those type of events, multiple inches of rain. And what we're seeing with the data is these type of events have increased. So it's only 1% of the storms that meet this kind of criteria. But those storms, they have increased by 42% since 1951, right? So we're just seeing them, the frequency and the intensity of those storms are increasing and on the rise. And, I know I had a personal experience with it because in June of 2021, my son drove my car down to a friend's house in Detroit, and then they were going to visit someone else. He left it there. And they got 6.5 inches of rain in, I don't know, 6 hours. I might have the hours wrong. And my car completely flooded. It was on the street. And for me, it was inconvenient, right? I mean, I have insurance. It was a hassle. But overall, it wasn't the end of the world, right? But for people in Detroit who, had their basements completely flooded with sewage coming in, and backups and loss of property. And, it took days and days, and still some of them are still, all of their appliances needed to be replaced. Water heaters, washing machines, dryers, anything that's down there. And, it's just a huge impact. And that really is one of the most biggest impact of these extreme events, right? We all felt it with the ice storm. It's on the personal loss of property. And, they also, of course, have impacts on infrastructure, like our roads and our sewer systems. When you have these extreme rain events, raw sewage gets discharged typically to whatever water bodies, right? There's not enough capacity to hold it in most wastewater systems. So it's just going to get sent out to our water bodies where it, releases nutrients and other pollutants. And then that can have impacts on drinking water infrastructure if they're pulling water from a surface water, right? We need to make sure we have the proper collection and filtering mechanisms and treatment to make sure we're removing pollutants adequately. And of course, it's the same things I already mentioned. You get a big flood, you're going to have more erosion. And it can also impact recreation areas. We know that from ice storm, right? There's still trails I want to hike on, and I appreciate anyone in this room who has helped clear any trail. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So with this one, though, one of the things we've done at Freshwater Future is, we knew that these type of flooding events were occurring in some of the urban areas. I shared 2013, 2018. And so we were already aware that some of the urban areas were particularly vulnerable to this type of flooding from extreme rain events. And so we launched a program, and it's really mostly focused in Detroit to help community groups actually build their own resilience to these type of flooding events, right? So you have a city like Detroit that is huge. And when these storms hit, it's very targeted. It's a very small area that often gets flooded, right? And then it just makes it really difficult to get the right response always. So we created a flood focus app. It's a very simple app that just helps our community groups do participatory science, right? So what they do is they get volunteers when it rains, they go out, they collect data with this app, which georeferences it so we can put it on a map, and they take a photograph of it so they can document the flooding in that location. And then what they get is a resource of a whole bunch of data points and data information that they can then go and use to meet with their decision makers and say, meet with their community members and say, this is the problem, what do we want to do? But then take that to their decision makers and say, we want solutions. So to give you an example, this is one of the community's maps that they've been willing to share with us. All of their data is their data. We keep it for them, but it's their data. So this is West Grand Boulevard Collaborative. So those of you who know Detroit, and I know some of you are from there, this is the area where Motown is, Henry Ford Hospital. And so they have collected, all of these data points of where flooding has occurred, right? So you can start to see the hot spots, right? It's really along the boulevard is where some of the main problems are, and that's where some of the storm sewers are. This picture is right in front of the Detroit Public, or near the Detroit Public Library branch, the Duffield branch, and that's a community hotspot, right? That's where people come. It's the community gathering location. So when it floods, people can't, it's hard to get to it because you can't even drive. You can't drive through here. So this group we're still working. One of the things we found here is there's clogged storm drains, right? Simple, should be simple. Well, I'm sorry, we're still working to get the storm drains unclogged and we are helping them with that. But at the meantime, this group has been able to go get funding to then develop a design for a pilot bioswale, and they have these little boulevards in between West Grand Boulevard and like the library. So they can do stormwater capture and treatment there before. So they can try to start eliminating some of that. So they're just taking their own initiative to do it on their own. They also, because of this work, it helped, I think, bring their awareness in the community up so that then there's a big development happening there. Henry Ford Hospital, Michigan State Pistons, multi-billion-dollar endeavor. And they were chosen through the community benefits agreement aspect to be the community land trust. So what that means is they're going to help to make sure that there are homes available for residents who have been there for a long time. So residents will get gentrified and moved out. They'll be able to keep their homes. But then one of the things their goal is at West Grand is then how do we incorporate more green infrastructure into these properties so that we can, even at a site-by-site basis, do more to reduce the flooding and protect people's property in the basement. So that's kind of something we're doing locally. So there's, of course, other impacts too. So lake levels, of course, if there's increased evaporation, then there's, less water, and water's in the atmosphere and our lakes drop down. What we're seeing mostly with that one is it's variable. They don't know what it's going to be, right? What we're seeing is really an increased variability. So it used to take longer periods of time to go from extreme lows to extreme highs. And now we're starting to see that fluctuation be a little bit more frequent, right? And each one of these lines is a different lake, and you can find this on Glisa. In addition, we already talked a little bit about snow and ice cover. That has an impact on our economy potentially, most of all, right? Ski areas, snowmobiling, ice fishing. With warmer temperatures, more precipitation, we also have an increase in algal blooms, and particularly toxic algal blooms or harmful algal blooms. Every Great Lakes state now has toxic algal blooms by the end of the summer, even Lake Superior. It's just, and it's a solution. It's nutrients, right? Yeah.
Just a question on that graph at the top, looking at the lakes. Ontario almost seems like it's leveled out a little bit. Is that because of locks?
It could be, yeah. It's because, and they have been doing some things on Lake Ontario because there's a lot of complaints. But I don't know for sure.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good note. It's a good recognition. Yeah, for sure. So the harmful algal blooms are one of those things that we're just going to see an increase, right? I live across the street from Burt Lake. I don't see it every year, but sometimes usually in September, early September, I might see a small blue-green algal bloom, right? That doesn't mean there's microcystin or the toxic algae there, but I will start to see some more blue-green algae, right? And so what we need to do in these circumstances is, it's really reduce nutrients, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Of course, fish and wildlife are impacted. We've already talked about how trout streams and our fish can be impacted if there's not enough oxygen, their habitat's destroyed, spawning beds can be destroyed. The list goes on. Yeah, Susan.
Like, that's great for regular time myself, to recognize what algal blooms are dangerous. Like, I look at animals, visual pictures, are they different? Are they all green? I mean, what brown, what are we gonna see in the water?
It's a great question. You can tell, there are some things some ones you can tell visually. Technically you really do need to look under a microscope to know, are these blue-green algae or not, right? Because you're talking about microscopic organisms together. They will often have a different appearance and color. I think up here, we might have them here and there, but I wouldn't worry about them yet. So I don't want to panic anyone about knowing. If you are spending a lot of time at Lake Erie, then you want to be very familiar with them, and you want to be very familiar with where the forecasts are and how to get warnings about where to avoid, right? Because they can get airborne and you don't want to even be near them, or let your pets can't drink the water, right? In those severe circumstances. So I can probably send you some things of how you could learn to.
How the testing, water quality testing, like just in each of the lakes or parts of the lakes, so like who's doing it here, like the bay?
Yeah.
Are they testing the water here on?
Well, yeah, so you have the health department testing the beaches to make sure the beaches are safe. You have Tippecanoe Watershed Council doing regular testing to make sure they're really looking mostly at the open water. And I think that's, right now, I think those are the important things to be monitoring. There are also other institutions that are doing research in other locations where they are collecting samples to look for algae as well. So I'll be honest, I don't know all of the monitoring research that's ongoing. We have a lot of it, so we can be fortunate for that, for sure. But it's something to be aware of, right? Something we can learn more about, even myself. Oh, uh-huh.
And there was
Oh,
murkiness, and then when you walk down the rocks, and because you couldn't see the rocks, right? And there are big rocks there, and it was slimy, and it
Yeah.
was sticky, like I had on, Kevlar water shoes, and I was sticking to the bottom, I was like, okay. And we were all covered with it, we got out inside our bathing suits. And I know that might move around depending on the wind, but I'm going, what is that?
so in that instance, so that algae is most likely not blue-green algae. It's probably a green algae. It's probably a filamentous algae, which means it kind of, can be stringy. And one of the reasons we have more of it in certain locations on Lake Michigan, of course, and you might already know some of this, but we have the mussels, right? The zebra mussels and the quagga mussels. So those zebra mussels and those quagga mussels have cleared the water significantly, right? Clearer than it ever was, removing those nutrients. They then also have feces, which drops to the bottom, right? And so the type of nutrients available to other aquatic life and the location of those nutrients has changed, right? So you have more nutrients now at the bottom in certain locations. And so those nutrients on the bottom then support the growth of periphyton, or the type of algae that attaches to rocks. Cladophora, Spirogyra, there's a bunch of names for them. And that attaches to the rocks because it responds to nutrient levels. And then when you get waves in certain locations, it's going to break it up, and then it's going to wash them into certain bays in certain locations.
Yeah.
So that's why in Petoskey State Park, sometimes there's a ton of algae there. And then when it starts to decay, it becomes brown, and it's typically not harmful, but it does take away from the aesthetic and the recreation experience, right? Yeah, exactly. So, and that's one of the things I hadn't talked about too much. I meant to mention it earlier is, invasive species. I mean, I think some of these things make the conditions better for other invasive species too, right? So it means that those mussels can continue to thrive, or there's another fish that might thrive and push out our species. So it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about solutions. So I don't leave you with all the doom and gloom, because it's really not. I don't want to be too doom and gloomy, because I have a lot of hope. I really do. I mean, look at all these incredible people who came today to actually learn about this, right? I mean, that to me is incredibly hopeful that we can do what we need to do. And I really like to think of it as there's kind of, um, if we want to protect all those incredible experiences that you all shared, right? The kayaking, the looking at the ice, the being on the river, we'll need to do some of these things. And it comes in 3 different categories. And I'm going to flip a couple of them. It's about adapting and advocating and acting. So, and we're going to take those in that order, even though I have them up here different. So adaptation. So when it comes to actually really addressing climate change, there's really kind of 2 main approaches. So mitigation is the one we often hear the most about, right? So that is, how do we cut carbon emissions and greenhouse gases? And that is essential. We have got to do that, right? The more we do that, the better off we're going to be. But when it comes to natural resource management and protecting waters, we're really looking quite a bit at adaptation, right? What we've done with the amount of carbon and greenhouse gases in the air, the weather and the climate is kind of on a path, right? For the next few decades, right? That's why for mid-century, they're pretty confident of how things are going to change, because even if we stopped all the carbon emissions now, the wheels are in motion for the weather and the atmosphere and everything else. That's not going to change. So what we do know is we need to understand how climate is impacting the resources and then manage our resources to really protect the health of those resources. So that might look like, it includes incorporating climate change into any kind of restoration work that's being done. It means really working to address non-climate stressors. The same things that have been impacting water for 30 years are still impacting water 30 years. But now with climate change, it just makes them more vulnerable. So what we know we got to reduce pollution. You got to reduce nutrient pollution. You got to reduce toxic pollution. You have to protect your shoreline areas, and you have to make sure there's there's enough natural habitat and native shorelines. I mean, in some ways, things haven't changed, but when you add the climate change lens, it just says we need to do more of this now, right? It just kind of ramps it up. We have to do more of it now to really protect them. Capacity building. The more we get organized now, the better. That might be if you don't live here year round, maybe it's your community somewhere else. You get a group that works on climate change or works on water or an issue important to you. It might be more monitoring. It might be looking at the tools that are out there that other communities are using. If you have flooding, let me know. We'll let you use the Flood Focus app, right? To help collect some data and document it. Policies. We need policies. We need policies at the local level, the state level, and the federal level that help move us to a more sustainable place. And that could be as simple locally as having greenbelt ordinances, right? You develop on the waterfront, you protect a natural buffer strip in front of your property to reduce pollution going into the lake, right? It might be fertilizer regulations. You can't use fertilizers in certain locations. It might be planting natives. It might be a state policy for renewable energy. I mean, Michigan does have a new climate action, I'm not gonna get the name right, a climate plan. It's pretty ambitious. Maybe it could be a little more ambitious, but you can make sure that they're moving forward on it. Are they making progress to reach those goals? And at the federal level, of course, we really need strong policies, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then infrastructure. We have to make sure our infrastructure is ready for these changes. We know that as we develop new roads, they need to be prepared for different rain events, right? How are we going to manage the runoff better? What about our water systems? Do they have the proper precautions in place, whether there's low water, high water, or pollution? Do we have disaster plans in place? We didn't really have a good enough one for ice. did we? So we learned. Okay, now we know. All the governments are on top of it. What do we need to do to prepare for the next ice storm? And they'll be ready, right? But we need to do that for other types of potential disasters too. You know, whoever thought there'd be a tornado in Gaylord, right? And there was. So we have to start thinking about our area and being a little bit more prepared for what the worst can be so that we're prepared to make sure that we protect our communities and the resources, but also our resources. Okay, I'm going to skip this one and come to advocate next. So I think, you know, advocating is one of the easiest things we can do really to make a difference. It can also be hard. And right now there is a number of things you can advocate on that would do good to help address climate change, and particularly in our resources. So, you know, we really need funding at all levels. We need it at, you know, we need funding for climate science locally for the tip of the mitt who's doing their studying. We need it for state agencies who are looking at climate. We need it for our federal agencies, EPA. We just need that. We need the research to continue because if we stop collecting that research, we won't have it. Right now, the climate assessment data is removed from the government's website. Now, a couple of private other organizations have taken that data. So the data is not lost, of course, but you can't access it, right? So we also need to have access to information, to climate science information. Federal agencies like NOAA, National Weather Service, and FEMA all need to be funded, right? We're going to have more and more natural disasters, not just here. We're seeing them everywhere, right? So we need those agencies to be strong and well funded. We need more renewable energy, right? I know there's a lot of pushback on it right now, but we need more of it. We need to protect our forests. One of the reasons northern Michigan's waters are so healthy is their headwaters where they begin, those streams where they begin, are in forested areas, right? They're protected. We have these large swaths of forested areas in our watersheds that are undeveloped. And that helps to make sure that the water in those tributaries that gets into our lakes or our rivers is very healthy. And of course, we need to protect public health. You know, I know this summer I've already had a couple days from the forest fires where I didn't go outside, right? And that just really bums me out. I don't want to have to stay inside. I don't have air conditioning. I don't want to stay inside in front of my fan, right? I want to be outside in this beautiful place that we live in, enjoying it. So we need to do more for public health as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to the last thing we can all do to protect waters, right? So I did talk about, when I talk about advocating, you know, when it means advocating, there's ways to do that. You can contact your decision makers. You can, we send out a lot of forms. You can fill out our little forms to contact your decision makers. You can educate your neighbors and your family. It doesn't mean always talking to a government official or an agency person, right? There are lots of different ways to be an advocate. It might be talking in your place of faith about these issues and how important that they are. So that leads us kind of to acting ourselves, right? I mean, individually, you know, sometimes individually, I feel like when I do something, it doesn't make a difference, right? But actually it does. The more of each of us take actions and do make decisions for things that will help protect our resources, it has a collective impact. And that collectively, we can actually shift how decisions are made and how things go forward. We know that, you know, the example I was thinking of this morning is when I first moved here, it was like 35 years ago. So I'm not quite a local, but you know, zebra mussels had not become established yet. And at the time, one of the ideas thrown out was we could wash boats at every boat launch. And everyone said, we can't do that. It's just too hard, right? Well, guess what? It might have been too hard, but now we have zebra mussels everywhere and we know the impacts of those zebra mussels. But guess what you have to do now? Now you have to wash your boat. There are boat washing stations everywhere. So it can take decades to shift, right? From here's the threat, how do we change our behaviors, right? But we have to do that if we really want to protect what is important to us and what we value and what's really, you know, and for us, it really is the water in this region. So your choices you can make lots of different choices. You probably have better ideas than I do. Maybe you can tell me some of your choices afterwards when we're talking, things that you do that are better for the environment, and maybe I can adopt those too. But it could be you use less energy. If you can afford solar panels, great. If you can't, that's okay. Maybe you commute to work and you can ride a bike. If you're me, I just commute because I go into my son's bedroom. But but it could be other ways, right? It could be having a garden or buying, how fortunate we are, all of the farms up here that you can buy local organic produce. Oh my gosh, we are so, so lucky for that. That's really an important way to help protect our resources. So there's lots of different things we can do. I think, maybe one of the most important things is to actually get out and enjoy the waters. It's, those things that we love doing. That's what is important. It's why we revere living here. So we want to make sure that those resources stay that way. And so the only way to do that is to go and do those things and celebrate and have fun. So I encourage you to do that. And I also encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter if you haven't. I can maybe leave it on there. It's easy to do. You can also just go to our website. And then I do have a couple slides at the end, though, just with resources. So, oh yeah, let me go back. I can share the slides, but there's links to some of these. We have this toolkit out on our table if you want it. And then here's the links to GLISA and some of the other places that have great climate information. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Is anybody modeling population migration and from climate change?
Yes, that's a good question. They are. There's a lot of people studying it. I don't know too much about it, I'll be honest. What I do know is, though, that we are considered a climate refuge, right? Because we hold more than 20% of the Earth's fresh surface water with the Great Lakes. And because even though we have these extreme rain events, they are nothing like other locations, right? They are not hurricanes. They are not forest fires in the huge sense. So we are seen as a refuge. I know a lot of people are studying what that migration might look like. There's some studies that look like it's like, oh, it's going to be great. Our economy is going to grow. But if your economy grows, then you're also pushing out people from this region already, right? So it's controversial, and I think it's something to pay attention to. Mhm.
Thanks, Ann, for your thought-provoking and scary.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want it to be too scary.
But doesn't really have water world climate change aspect. What are the economic implications of the climate change regulation?
Well, that's a great question. You mean like the climate change regulations, like that are in place right now, or the ones? I don't know. I guess I can be honest. It's not really, something I know a ton about. I do know that there's economic implications if we roll them back, right? Well, I think if we roll back some of the climate implications. So right now, I know they're looking, saw it in the news this morning, right? One of the things they want to do is say that greenhouse gases, it's not an endangerment from humans, right? So that means greenhouse gases will not be considered a problem. So that means then gas and coal-fired power plants will be able to increase their emissions, which means there's more carbon in the air.
What effect does that have?
And then what that effect has on the economy then is, I think, it's going to have more impact on, it's just going to contribute, exacerbate climate change, right? And then that means some of these impacts that we have are going to get worse as well. It means, I think particularly for that one, it's going to be air pollution, right? So air pollution is really connected to public health. And so the more air pollution we have, the more public health impacts we have. And then those public health impacts have a impact on our economy. So, I'm sorry, I'm not an economist, but I'm happy to try to look for a couple articles, because there's a lot out there on it.
That's one part.
Yeah. It does. You're right. I mean, I guess I think of it more because I don't think about it always from I should be thinking about the regulatory point of view, but if you know, the Great Lake, the fishing industry in the Great Lakes is like over, they said 7 billion, but it might be a little less than that, right, annually. $7 billion. Okay, well, if you can't fish for whitefish, or if you can't fish for perch, then it's gonna, it cuts down, right? It cuts down on the charter boat captains, it cuts down on the tourism economy. So I think those impacts are real, right? And I think I probably am a little more familiar with it from the water connection than some of actually the other ones. Yeah, I'm sure it impacts commercial fishing as well, right? Mhm.
Whitefish is down like 70.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no food, right? Yeah. Yeah, there's no food. We have to protect their spawning habitat. I mean, the tribes are very engaged in it, right? Because they're doing the commercial fishing. So I think that's, I mean, that's a plus for us, really. They also, the tribes are bringing a lot of traditional knowledge to the table when it comes to managing climate change. But there's a lot of stressors. So yeah, tough choices and tough decisions. Mhm.
That's economic.
Yes, yeah, that, right.
And just the use of the resource, just to combat them, and then also, offer, and then that raises the cost for people for those same resources.
Mhm.
Supplying the resource, so I mean, it's such a snowball thing.
Mhm. Yeah, good, tough questions. Any other ones?
I
Yes.
just wanna, I'm on social media, so you have to decide where you're gonna get your news from.
Oh, yes.
So, but there are so many amazing groups out there that are reporting on the environment, the politics, everything. People are speaking out. So, in terms of, you could just, if you're not a social, Instagram's great, Facebook, that's great. I mean, it's a great way to get resources. I mean, I send them out to everybody, my family members, read this, So anyway, but anyway, it's just that, just get educated,
Yeah,
and just keep up with what's going on. And that'll be motivating.
yeah.
So,
There's a lot of great groups working on climate change, within the state as well as region and nationally and internationally, and they're doing incredible work. And so, I encourage people to look for some of those, and some of these are up here. So it's great. Yeah, I'm not sure I know what you're hinting at, but yes, we need to have funding for forecasting, right? I mean, right now, they've already cut the forecasting budget for NOAA, so the forecasting in Lake Erie is weakened, right? They have less staff there. We're definitely concerned that some of the toxic algae might get missed. Those communities that rely on that water for their drinking water source, many of them have very, very expensive filters, but that also, is there enough people in place and resources in place to make sure that the people are protected? Yeah,
I know what we should require here. That shows that you notify your congressmen, congresswomen, national leaders, even if they are, they're supporting your position. You jam their, emails, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
I
I agree. And I would just add that, I'll encourage you, one more ditch. And I feel bad because I forgot to thank Crooked Tree in the beginning. But if you sign up for our emails, we give you a whole bunch of easy options to take action, right? You just have to click, and then you can read through the message, you can personalize it, you can decide if you like it. If you like it, you can send it, right? It's just like two clicks. So sign up for those if you want to do that.
I think we also have to think about how private resources can come out and support and fund what we're losing government support for. We can't just constantly send our letters, I send all those letters to somebody who doesn't listen to any of them. You still send them, but who has the resources to help fund some of these things because we have a lot of people who do care, who do have the financial resources and to value the $25 donation, the $50 donation. I mean, it's not always, it doesn't always have to be huge money, but as private citizens who are concerned, we have to try to find another avenue in.
Yes, donations support all of us nonprofits, right? I'll say both Crooked Tree and us and any other ones that are in the room, that is, we need that, right? Especially now. I mean, we're fortunate we don't rely on federal funding, but some of our partner groups do, and that's been really tough, right? It's a very difficult time. Yeah.
Are there some examples of communities that have successfully limited pesticide and fertilizer application? Because I do a lot of walking around town and it kind of shocks me. There seems to be a disconnect. All of the little signs, stay off the grass, like until it dries, like why do we need all this stuff?
That's
So I wonder if there's some examples of communities and, to learn how they've gone through the process of living.
That's a great question. I don't know. I have to be honest. Maybe you know of one.
We live in great areas and suburbs and side areas, actually head on the drain, that's a good example.
Oh, yeah, dumps to drain. Yeah.
You know, like.
So Ann Arbor, I mean, I hate to point out Ann Arbor. I love Ann Arbor. I am a go bluer, but Ann Arbor can do things that no place else can do, right? Like, but they have no mow May, right? So you're not allowed to mow in May, right? So it's not only, that you shouldn't, you'll get a ticket, right? Because they're trying to promote pollinators. So, I mean, I think there are places, I'll be honest, I'm not as engaged in some of that as much now, but I'll ask around because I know when I worked at the Watershed Council, that was one of the things that frustrated me the most, right? Like I would work with people on the lakes all the time and they loved the lake, they wanted to protect it. But when I said, one of the best things you can do is not apply fertilizer. Well, I really want my grass green. Well, okay, well, what do you want? Do you want your grass green or do you want a clean lake, right? Those are real choices that we have to make. And until we can shift that, I don't know, but I'm hoping, I believe there are places out there who have done it successfully, and maybe Leslie and I can get one of our summer interns to find it and then we'll share that. Yeah, rain gardens are really effective, right? Like in some locations. I mean, the ones that I know the tip helped to do here are just amazing around town.
Plus
Yeah, they're beautiful, right? Yeah, I mean, they take a lot of work because you do have to maintain them, but they're a really nice feature and they, help pollinators.
And rain girl.
And rain barrels. I mean, that's one of the things in one of our neighborhood groups. We're just starting to work with them. I worked with him a long time ago, but we're starting again. But he really wants to work with each property owner on doing some of the green infrastructure so they can lower their stormwater fee because they have a stormwater fee in Detroit and it's expensive. So if you do some of these things, then you can lower your fee. And he's trying to help his residents in his neighborhood lower their fees. So we're going to try to help him collect the data so then they can get more money to do that. Yeah.
They do that because here our stormwater fee is just tied to our water usage. So it is tied to our water usage. So if we're using gray water to water the plants, and if most of that water isn't going down the drain, so they charge for it.
Yeah. So I just had my one of our summer interns work on that, and I haven't read it yet because I had her break it down because I'm like, I need to understand better about how Detroit's doing this. You get a certain percentage off if you can prove you have a rain barrel or a rain garden. So you have to send in documentation to them, and then they will lower it by a certain percentage. And I'm happy to share that too.
Did I not read a while ago that Michigan is banned fertilizers with phosphorus?
They have. So at least you can't use fertilizer or phosphorus on lake shores anyways. But I don't know if you can buy them out for other things because I don't buy them.
I no longer. I mulch on others. I don't use on more.
There you go.